Welcome to Chapter 8 of Pax by Sarah Pennypacker. The sound Peter most loved in the world, the leather-to-leather smack of ball and glove, was so real in his dream that he smiled as he opened his eyes. And then he yelped in shock. A woman stood over him, tossing a baseball into a glove. She wore patched overalls with faded bandanas knotted along the straps, and her hair was a spiked mess that shook as she cocked her head to study him. He scrambled backwards along rough wooden floorboards, crying out again, this time at the pain shooting up from his right foot. It all came back fast. In rising panic, he looked around for his pack. There it was, behind the woman, its contents strewn all over the floor. She came closer and thumped the ball into the glove a little harder. His ball and his glove, Peter realized. The ball that had been in his pack. The glove he'd been sleeping on. He strained up. "Hey, that's my stuff! What are you doing here?" At that, the woman threw her head back and barked something between a laugh and a snort. She pitched him the ball and glove away and crouched down to eye him, one hand wrapped around the clutch of feathers she wore on a rawhide strip around her neck. This close, Peter could see she wasn't as old as he thought. Not much older than his father, anyway. A single gray streak bolted through her hair, but her skin was smooth. When she narrowed her eyes and snapped her fingers at his face, it dawned on him this woman might be crazy. "Oh, no. This is my barn you broke into, so what are you doing here?" would be my question. Peter scooted back. Crazy or not, the woman standing over him had a full wall of hatchets and scythes behind her, and he was 1 foot short of a running pair. "Okay, right, I hurt my foot last night. I passed your barn and I needed a place to stay, so look, I'll go." "Not so fast. What do you mean you passed my barn? This is private property and I'm in the middle of nowhere." The woman straightened to her full height and Peter edged back even further. I was taking a shortcut home from..." The practice he'd been to the day before flashed before him. He nodded to his ball and glove. "From batting practice." You were coming home through my land from batting practice. Then the first thing I'm wondering is, why don't you have a bat?" She tossed a hand towards his stuff. "Why you carry a roll of duct tape, garbage bags, a charm bracelet, clothing, food, and water, but no bat, huh, boy?" The way she said boy, silky and stretched out just 2 syllables, made him realize she had the hint of an accent. Only a hint, as if someone in her childhood, people around her, had spoken a language that was close to singing. "Well, I left it. A bat's heavy to carry around." The woman shook her head again, and this time she looked disgusted. She yanked at the left leg of her overalls. Below the knee, her leg was a rough wooden post. She stabbed it down beside Peter. "Now this leg? Oh, this leg is heavy, boy. Solid heart pine, but I carry it around, don't I?" The woman peered down at it and seemed to discover something she didn't like. She pulled out a knife from her belt and with a flick of her wrist, shaved off a chink from just above where her ankle would have been. Then she straightened to face Peter again, the knife jabbing directly at him. "So let's try this one more time, because I am very curious now. If you're at batting practice, how is it that you don't have a bat?" Peter dragged his gaze up to the woman's face and then back down to the knife. The blade gleamed long and thin, with an evil-looking curve to it. She was probably crazy, all right, probably worse. His heart stuttered in his chest and his mouth was a desert. But he managed to answer, "I don't own one." The woman flashed half a grin with a quick wink. "Okay, yes, that has more the feel of truth. What's your name?" Peter told her. "So, no bat, Peter. What's this about your foot?" Peter kept his eye on the knife as he peeled the sweatshirt from his foot. The pain of just that slight movement shocked him. Shudders racked him, and for the first time he realized how cold he was. I twisted it. The woman crouched down, her wooden leg angled out awkwardly, and Peter looked away. "Don't move." Before he could even register what was happening, the woman slipped her cool blade of her knife inside his sock, and with it, a quick stroke, slit it open. He pressed his lips together to keep from crying out. His foot was as dark and swollen as an eggplant. "You walked on this!" Peter pointed to a branch beside him. "I broke it off and made a cane." His finger was shaking and he dropped his hand. The woman nodded again and cupped her hands around his heel. "I'm going to move this around," she said. "Are you ready?" "No, don't touch it!" But the woman began to probe his foot, calling commands. "Move your big toe. Now all of them." And this foot, side to side. Peter winced with pain, but he did everything she asked. "You're lucky," she said, setting Peter's foot down on his sweatshirt. "A non-displaced fracture of the fifth metatarsal. That's a clean break in the outermost bone of the foot." "Lucky? How is a broken bone lucky?" The woman reared back, slammed her wooden leg down near his hand, and stabbed her blade into the wood. "Oh, I don't know. Let's see. How is only a broken bone lucky?" Okay, I get it. Sorry." She tugged the knife from her leg and pointed it at him. "You're young. You'll be in a cast for maybe 6 weeks and you'll heal fine." "How do you know this stuff? Are you a doctor or something?" "I was a medic. Another life." The woman hoisted herself up and looked down at Peter as if she just put it together. "A runaway." She crossed her arms over her chest and cocked her head at him. "Yes? Are you running away?" No, I was just out hiking." She clapped her hands to her ears and frowned. "I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. My lie detector is going off. Try again. Are you running away from home?" Peter sighed. "Not exactly." "Then what exactly were you doing last night, passing through my land with your extra clothes and your supplies, no-bat Peter?" "Well, I'm not running away from home. I'm running to home." "Oh, that's a twist. Continue." Peter looked out the window and over the workbench. Tall pines piercing a pale morning sky, and a bunch of crows argued noisily in the top branches. If there were a story he could tell that would get him out of this barn and back on the road to Pax, he would tell it. He would disappear into that day, fractured fifth metatarsal and all. But if such a story existed, he couldn't think of what it was. He slumped against the wall. "The war. It's headed to our town. They'll take the river. My dad had to go serve. My mom died, so it's just us. So he brought me." "How old is father of yours?" "What? 36. Why?" "But he didn't have to do anything. If there's a draft, it's for 18 to 20-year-olds. Still kids, easy to brainwash. So if your father went, he volunteered. It was his choice. So let's start off this story with truth. That's the rule around here." "Okay, sure. He chose to go, and he brought me to my grandfather's, and you didn't like it there." "That wasn't it. It was just, could you put that away?" The woman looked down and seemed surprised to find the knife in her hand. "Such bad manners, Vola," she chided herself. "We've forgotten how to behave with a guest." She tossed the knife on the workbench. "Go on." "Okay, I had a fox. I have a fox. We turned him loose. We left him on the side of the road. My dad said we had to, but I never should have done it." Since the instant they'd driven away, Peter had been tormented by the things he should have said to his father. They all came rushing out now. "I raised him from a kit. He trusted me. He won't know how to survive outside. It doesn't matter that he's just a fox. That's what my father calls him, just a fox. As if he's not as good of a dog as a dog or something." Yes. You were plenty angry, so you ran." "I wasn't angry. I'm not. It's just that my fox, he depends on me. I'm going back to get him." "Well, now you're not. Change of plans." "No, I have to get him and take him home." Peter rolled to his knees, swallowed the gasp of pain that shot from his foot. He grabbed the branch and tried his weight on it for a second, then sank back down, exhausted from just that. "Now, you still think this? How far did you leave him?" 200 miles, maybe more," Peter admitted. Bolas snorted. "You didn't make it. You wouldn't make it 2 miles now. You'd be nothing but a bare bait out there. That is, if you didn't die of hypothermia the first night. You won't be able to move enough to keep warm." She leaned back against the workbench, winding a scarf around her finger, and Peter could tell she was trying to figure something out. She didn't look as crazy now, just deep in thought, and maybe worried. Then she seemed to come to a decision. Someone is bound to come looking for you, and I can't have you. I need you gone. But I can't send you out like this. I have enough on my conscience. I'll bind that foot and I'll give you something for the pain, something that's legal to give a child, and then, I'm not a child, I'm almost 13. Bola shrugged. And then you will leave. There's a garage not far down the highway. Call this grandfather of yours and have him come to get you. I'm not going back. I'm going to get my fox. Not like this, you're not. You cannot bear weight on the broken foot until the bone heals. 6 weeks at least. Maybe you'll try again then. 6 weeks? No, that'll be too late. My fox. Remember, boy, I know a little something about traveling on one leg. To get around before that bone heals, you'd have to lean to carry yourself from your shoulders and your arms. You'd have to become strong in new ways. Almost impossible for an adult, never mind for a child. I am not a child! Lola swept up a silencing hand. So you will go back now and have that broken bone set. But first, I will bind it for you and fix you something better than that branch to walk with. Lola pushed herself off the workbench and left the barn. Peter watched her disappear down the pine-framed path, rolling with a limp so deep that it looked painful. Then he crawled across the floor and stuffed his belongings back into his pack. He pulled himself up onto the workbench. The effort made him dizzy, but he had to white-knuckle the wood until his head cleared. His foot throbbed fiercely when he was upright, and by testing it slightly, he knew he was not going to be able to walk on it. Bola would bind it, though. He'd be able to walk on it then. He had to. He hoisted himself onto the bench to wait. He hadn't been able to see much of the barn that night before, even with a flashlight. Now he took it in. The floor was swept bare, the bags of seed and fertilizer stacked neatly by the door. The place smelled of clean hay and wood, and not of farm animals, although he could hear chickens nearby. The workbench took up a whole gable wall of the barn. It was lined with small tools and pieces of wood. Opposite, dark against the bright rectangle of the doorway beside it, draped burlap covered a bunch of things mounted on the wall. Another convulsion of shivers shook him, this time not from the cold. The covered mounds were shaped like human heads. Any number of perfectly harmless things could be hanging on a barn wall, but what they really looked like were human heads. Right, that is page 78 if you're in my class. And so I'm going to stop this and start the next part of the chapter in the next video.